The Deep Dive podcast is powered by Atla.im and brings you real stories from the Isle of Man's business community. Hosted by the Atla Group, we explore the journeys of entrepreneurs, business leaders, experts, government representatives, and our own team.
Hello humans, welcome to the Deep Dive podcast brought to you by Martin, that's me, and
Lyle,
that's him. Welcome back and hello Tim, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And if you forgot how to introduce, we'll say hello to people then. Thank you for your time.
No problem, thanks for asking me in.
Pleasure. So we've got lots to talk about, but perhaps some context for listeners and viewers. Who's Tim? Bit of your background.
So, Tim Groves, I work at Black Grace Cowley estate agents. I have been there for over 20 years. I sell houses, residential estate agent, chartered surveyor, and look after the residential side of our business predominantly.
And when you look at the split of the business from commercial to residential, what does that look like and is that typical representation for all estate agents on the Isle of Man, the split?
No, I don't think so. I think Black Grace Cowley's fortunate enough to be quite a diverse firm. It's quite a large firm. In terms of the splits between commercial and resi, it's at least half and half, at least 50-50. Mm-hmm. But I think, I might be wrong, we are, as a business, we do the most.
Okay.
It's the largest of the island estate agents. Yeah. It covers the most ground in terms of the property that it looks after and the services that it offers.
And not that we're going to reveal your age here, but based on being there for 20 years, what transition, and assuming that 20 years wasn't the day you left school, what transitioned you from whatever you were doing before into this space?
Oh, blimey. I came out of uni and did the usual travelling and then signed up for the KPMG graduate scheme to be a chartered accountant. Didn't last particularly long. It wasn't really for me. And then got into property.
Okay.
So my father, back in the day, helped set up and establish one of our rivals, Cowley Groves. That was in the mid to late 1970s. So when the opportunity came for me to get into this business, I started to work for them in commercial. So it's commercial sales, commercial lettings, which I did for about a year or 18 months. And then a client who I worked for offered me an opportunity in their family office business, which I took. A couple of years later, beginning to get to the ends of the chartered surveyor qualifications, sort of a master's degree distance learning. So the issue I had was that continuing to work for the family office would mean I couldn't qualify. So I said to them one morning, look, I can't do this anymore because fundamentally that's where I want to be. So what do we do? Which led to a conversation with Mark Grace, who offered me the opportunity to come into BGC, which was, as I say, just over 20 years ago. And then 2008, another opportunity to buy into the business. And now here we are.
Yeah, right.
And we're sort of, enjoying ourselves.
What do you think sets you guys apart from the other estate agents on the Isle of Man?
What sets us apart? I think it's easy to sort of be a bit boastful. It's easy to perhaps come across in the wrong way. But we've got a fantastic team of people in our business. They all work hard. They have an incredible work ethic, but most importantly, they're knowledgeable. They have experience and they care. And I think for a long, long time, estate agents are sort of tarred with, the rogue's brush, perhaps. They don't really care. They're just after a fee. Estate agency's easy. Sell them, stack them high, sell them cheap type arrangement. But now our business prides itself on a service sort of level, a standard, if you like. And it's always seeking to try and improve those standards and to go that little bit further for a client. I mean, for example, I sold a house to a client who has some land, and he needs the land topping, he needs the grass baling. So I've organised that for him. I'm not being paid for that. It's after the sale. I've had the fees that we earned from the vendor, but I'm now looking after the new buyer in a way that actually makes his life easier, which hopefully leads to other opportunities. But I do it anyway. I'm not sitting there doing it for monetary gain. I do it because I think that's what you ought to do, particularly in a community like the Isle of Man. I think putting yourself out there and making yourself available to people to help them I think is really, really important for not only, yourself, but for others. I think it's the way business should be done in a community and in a business environment like the Isle of Man.
And are you guys quite deliberate about that culture that exists within Black Grace Cowley? Is it something that you think that founders have kind of instilled and something that you now carry that baton forward with?
Very much so. I mean, the founders of the business, Mark Grace, Jeff Black, Patrick Cowley, Anna Kelly, of course, as well, who was never named in the business, but was a founding director. They've passed those values down. And I think the younger ones that have come in have picked it up, run with the baton and realised it works. So yeah, very much so. I think that's crucial. I think it's really, really important. We have a very, very low staff turnover. Some businesses are revolving doors. Some businesses, you're just a number. We like to think it's a bit different with us. Yeah. You don't get it right all the time, of course, but we like to think it's a bit different.
So if we then look at the property market on the Isle of Man, it's, maybe describe it in a few words, and then what's the current state like? So we're in, I suppose, 2025, appreciating this lasts on the internet forever, these conversations, but what's it like now? Where do you see it going? Magic wand, how would you, I guess, like any situation, you can make it better? I assume we could make the property market better here. What's the type of things as well?
I mean, so many things.
There's 10 questions there. And
yeah, so many things that you can go into. I mean, let's start with what's it like today. I would say it's quite healthy. And by healthy, I mean there are buyers, whether they are from within the island or whether there are eyes looking at our market from, foreign shores. The turnover of stock is reasonable, but there's never enough stock. And we can go on to that at a later date in terms of stock for people moving here, sustainability, and all of those sorts of things. House prices are fairly robust. Post-COVID, there was a circa 15-20% surge in house prices, more in some cases because, quite simply, certain parts of the market were in greater demand than others. Obviously, you have the median house prices, I think 350,000 from the year ending December 24. Average house price was 379, something along those sorts of lines. Those figures are available from the Isle of Man government. So you see where the sweet spot is. You see where the majority of the activity is. So post-COVID, for all the reasons that I think we all understand, I want to move, people were paying more money for a house that was there and available. So we did see a rise in prices, but what we've sort of seen is that curve start to flatten a little bit. But it's robust because it maintains a level of demand in the market. And supply is slightly less than it perhaps could be. So price just keeps competitive. Mm. At the higher end of the market, it's been a very interesting 4 years. 4 years, because again, I'm using COVID as a line in the sand. When we came out of lockdown, none of us really knew what to do. None of us knew whether we were washing our hands, covering our face. Who could we talk to? Were we even allowed in a house? But relatively quickly, it just kicked off. And we found that the Isle of Man was seen as this almost glorious place to live and work. We could pull up a drawbridge, not let anybody in, be COVID-free, and enjoy everything that we've got here to enjoy. And there was envy from the UK particularly. There were people thinking, I want to live in that environment. So we got a lot of interest from people, lots of boots on the ground actually coming over here when they could at the time visit with a view to buying, which was really, really encouraging. And then obviously politically in the UK, it's been challenging. I think the latter years of the previous government, the writing was pretty much on the wall in the UK as to what was going to happen next. And certainly in the last 12 months, it appears as if what they thought was going to happen next has, and maybe it's a lot worse than it could be. So we've seen a great deal of interest from the UK, particularly from people looking to move here who are looking to buy a more expensive house.
And I have interest. Is interest getting converted to?
Yeah. We used to get the leads. The leads would come through the door, the calls would be made, the emails would come in, and you'd entertain it, you'd talk to them, you'd give them as much information as they'd asked for. And then you'd follow it up in the hope that that would become something tangible, right? And quite often it didn't. It was just an almost whimsical little exercise in exploring the possibility. Now, you've only got to look around the island. You see how many English cars are here. You see how many more expensive English cars are here. You've only got to look at the actual people walking into the office, sending us WhatsApp, sending us emails and messages, making phone calls saying, I'm coming then, I want to see. And then that translates into sales. And our stock, at the top of the market, again, if you were having cursory glances around agents' websites, you say, well, that's been on the market for years. That's still not sold, and so on and so forth. I challenge you to find too many that are...
Pre-COVID, you'd see them sitting for years.
All the time. I challenge you now to find very many that are historically unsold. There are one or two. There always will be, because sellers don't have the motivation necessarily. But certainly the turnover of stock at the higher end has been markedly changed, a marked uplift.
Is this people looking to relocate, so they're buying and they're coming here to live, or is this people buying as an investment?
No. This is just at the higher end of the market, Lyle. It's people buying to live here for whatever reason. Lifestyle's a huge pull. Tax is a huge pull. Safety, privacy are massive, and I think safety and privacy are under marketed. They are not. They're not promoted perhaps as much as they ought to be. It's really nice seeing a video of somebody kayaking around, the chasms, and 10 minutes earlier they left work. But that's not going to pull everybody. But I also appreciate it's really difficult for whichever government department's responsible for this to catch all in one advertisement.
Video.
But look, safety, privacy, tax, lifestyle, the main key drivers of bringing people across here for certain. Yeah.
And that, would you say that movement's definitely impacted more the top end price of the market?
Yeah, very much so. We've seen a lot more activity. Exactly.
Yeah.
However, there's still free movement of people. I mean, government are advertising for new people to come to the Isle of Man to take jobs across the spectrum, right? From graduates, they have graduate fairs, all the way through to doctors, consultants, and so on. Teachers, particularly nurses, dentists, the industries where it's quite tricky to find anybody. And I think there are multiple countries across the world that are not as well resourced as they want to or need to be. But one of the issues that at the lower level these guys have, they might want to come here and work in the school and take that job. But one of the challenges is where they live. They don't have a ready supply of housing.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask a bit more then about supply, because I suppose there's two aspects. There's just here, let's chat about what the Isle of Man looks like from a supply perspective and how difficult that is for that type of example. But then also, does the supply materially affect your business? Because obviously there's more houses, quote, on the island to buy or sell, but I wouldn't have thought materially it would change the flow, but maybe it does from a business perspective.
Not really.
No.
I mean, it doesn't translate.
Yeah.
It's a really fine balance. The whole supply-demand equation's a really, really fine balance. De Beers were great at it, weren't they? Keeping the price of diamonds. Rolex is another perfect example. They only make a certain number of watches a year, so they keep the price up, but they're still in demand because it's a luxury good. Lots of people want to buy. And developers are broadly similar. I'm sure they have a similar motive in that if they get planning approval for 100 units on a mixed-use residential development, they're not going to release 100 at once. They're going to phase it so that they test the market and they can maximise profit. The difficulty I see is if the Isle of Man wants to grow its population for whatever reason...
I don't think it's if. That's what they're committed to.
Well, they are committed to it. Then the jobs are here. I mean, I don't know about Atla. I'm sure that if you put a job advert out there, you'd probably be inundated with applications.
Yep.
You can't find overly reliable people across the piece that aren't already, or sorry, let me rephrase that. You can find reliable people, but they're busy. They already have commitments. They've already got a client base. They can't fit you in. So you think, okay, well, is there scope? Is there space in that part of the job market for new entrants? Well, of course there is, across the piece, whether they're gardeners, estate agents, builders, accountants. There are jobs out there. But without a sustainable policy towards housing, or without a housing supply to allow them to at least land here, it's very, very difficult. And I say this to people that ask me, I said, if you want a property on the Isle of Man, I'll sell you one. I've got plenty, okay? But if you want to come here, like a lot of us do when we move to a new place, we want to rent, we want to test the water. That's the tricky bit. You know, every day I have people coming into my office asking for rental property, and every day I'm having to say, look, I'm really sorry. I haven't quite got what you're looking for. But who's to say it won't come on at 4 o'clock this afternoon and I'll give you a ring? So we're taking names, we're processing all of the inquiries on a daily basis, and I would say that that's a common theme across the industry.
Yeah, okay.
But there just isn't the stock.
Can I ask a question around that? Because maybe dispel a myth, because sometimes I hear like prices are so expensive on the Isle of Man, it's investors buying it and just it's driving the price up. But if investors are buying it, they'd be renting out, and therefore the rental market will be maybe more buoyant than.
Yeah, look, I mean, a lot of it's hairdresser's chair stuff. Manx crabs, gossip. That's what you hear in the chair, isn't it?
Not heard that term before.
Well, I mean, I can't remember the last time I sold a house. Let's look at a stereotypical 3-bed semi-modern house on an estate to an investor, to a buy-to-let investor. Because fundamentally, if you were to pay $350,000, the median house price for that property, and you were to rent it out for $1,500 a month, what's that as a gross return? 5% and a bit?
Yeah, if that. Yeah.
So take the tax off, take the rates off, take the insurance off. You're about 2.7%, 2.8%.
Stick it in the bank.
Get more money. Why would you bother buying it to let it out? The only reason is you're going to count on capital growth. But actually, on the Isle of Man, historically, if you were to go back, look at house prices and look at the data from when it first started to the most recent sort of results, which would have been December, instead of it doing this as a curve, it's like a staircase.
Oh, okay.
So it's fairly robust and flatline. Then you have a period where the price rises, and then it happens again. So whilst over the cyclical 30-odd year hold, you're going to get capital growth. And property as a bricks and mortar investment is a good, solid investment. It's something you can drive past, something you can touch. And indeed, because there's a scarcity of rental property, you're likely to have 100% occupancy, or at the very least, when a tenant vacates, pretty damn quickly, another tenant to take the place. So it's a good investment, but the return is not as interesting, not as attractive, perhaps, as alternates.
Yeah.
But as I say, I can't remember the last time I sold a pure buy-to-let property.
Interesting.
But Dandara, Hartford, who sell direct to customer, and I guess other developers, may tell a different story.
Yeah.
They may have clients that have previously bought their homes who have got cash. They say, I'll buy a couple of those. And then they go into the rental market.
Yeah, true.
But we are missing rentable stock.
Those new builds also, they come with 10-year guarantees. And whereas
Generally, yeah.
It's generally is it quite expensive for Isle of Man to maintain property compared with other jurisdictions where you have like an oversupply of trades people?
I think everything costs a little bit more here because of the nature of being on an island. And indeed, if you want the right people or your preferred contractor, getting them is a bit more difficult. So yeah, you perhaps might pay a little bit more, but fundamentally, no. I mean, I think if you look after your property and you invest in it as and when is needed, like any asset, you prolong the life of it, right? But I wouldn't say necessarily it's vastly more expensive to do it.
So part of the conversation around properties, obviously we through the business as well, we get clients looking to resell, perhaps come here with with their business also. So if we then think about the commercial space and what's that like, businesses, whether it's just, I call it office space or what would you call it, more commercial, in the sense of, what I mean by that, don't you?
I suppose this also would have changed on the back of
engineering companies, for example, that need that kind of, what's that space like on the island, man? Or market?
Well, the office market will fluctuate in terms of levels of demand for space, dependent on the wider economic conditions, not just on the Isle of Man, but I guess globally. Globally, it's been tougher, hasn't it? And continues to be tougher than it has been, simply because of conflicts and inflation and all these other sorts of things. The industries on the Isle of Man, sticky business is a good phrase. A sticky business like insurance, life insurance. I understand. I mean, you might correct me if this is wrong, but if I'm on the Isle of Man and I write an insurance policy today for you on your life, and that's a 21-year policy, I have to service it for the life from the jurisdiction I write in. So it's sticky. So that keeps businesses writing that sort of business here on the Isle of Man. They require office buildings. They require everything within those buildings to keep their staff. Offices and commercial companies are always competing for talent, so they're looking to ensure that they have better buildings, better facilities, more attractive packages. That could be gym memberships, it could be swimming pools within the buildings, a bit like one of those shipping companies has up on Douglas Head Road. So businesses are always competing, but in terms of the current market, modern, open plan, grade A office space is full. There's some secondary space available, but it's more difficult to let it because a lot of these businesses now prefer having that flexibility, that open plan, the ability to then have everybody on the same floor, the water cooler collaboration style arrangement where we're all together rather in little rooms. However, if you're a lawyer or a legal practice, you quite like the fact that you've got individual rooms and then the fee earners can get on with doing what they're doing. But again, we're sustaining it. It's business appears from the outside in. I mean, I don't work in the commercial side of it anymore. I did 10 years of it in the agency and the management side, but I haven't done it for a long time. So I'm not au fait necessarily on exactly what's going on in the marketplace. I can only sort of say what my guys at the office are doing who work in that space. And again, like most of us, they're flat out.
I suppose it's not a stressful commute for people living on the Isle of Man. So there's no reason for people not to be in the office. We certainly see that people want to be in the office. And so finding that the space is a trick.
Yeah.
Parking,
And for me, I think it's super important that offices in town centres bring staff back. Everybody works out of those offices because there are businesses that are set up in the town centre. They could be coffee shops, any retailer. They rely on there being footfall. They rely on there being people in the town centres. And if you take everything out of town, if you business park your entire retail sector, your town centre becomes a ghost town. So then what do you do with it? So you have to think, well, how do I reinvest into the town centre to encourage more people into the town centre? So, one particular idea is, well, repurpose some of perhaps that secondary office space that may never get let again into residential. And then hang on, what happens next? We've suddenly got a supply of residential property for these people who we're trying very hard to attract here. But that would take thought. That would take, joining hands, the left hand knowing what the right hand's doing. It would take planning, urban town planning, city centre planning. The difficulty on the island, from my perspective, is there seems to be so many different stakeholders involved in these things that if one puts up a hand and says, I don't like that, it can come crashing down like a house of cards. But for me, I always believe in starting off with the end in mind. All right? It's coining a phrase from somebody else. I haven't made it up. But if you decide that that's my objective, you figure out backwards how you're going to get there. And you just get people on board through consensus. I'm doing this for your benefit. I'm doing this for them. there's no rhyme or reason why you couldn't.
Yeah. No,
There are certainly, I think there are answers on a high level basis to a lot of these challenges. I won't call them problems because I don't think they're a problem. They're just a challenge. How do we overcome that? How do we solve that?
Yeah. And to go back to residential, we touch on, we see a number of clients ourselves looking to relocate, perhaps just, maybe it's retirement, maybe it's tax, all the reasons you mentioned earlier. I guess if you had advice for those people moving or looking to move, aside from giving you a ring, it's what's the general advice about the market? Maybe manage your expectations in advance.
So I think, speak to us. Ask questions. Let us understand your motivations. I have a way in which, if somebody who's looking to move to the Isle of Man, I try and understand what motivates them. What does that particular demographic look like? Who are they? Is it a individual, a couple? Is it a family? If it's the family, what does the family need? The ages of the kids. What you try to put yourself in I think you should try to put yourself in the shoes of the person or people looking to relocate here, because we've got oodles and oodles of knowledge, and we hope we've got a fairly acute understanding of every element or every aspect of the island, every location. Well, I can get a lot more for my money in Derby. Okay, but are you going to send the kids down to King William's? Think of the drive. 4 times a day, there and back, there and back. Little nuances. But essentially, ask questions. Build a picture of who these people are. What's important to them. And you can then, a little bit like qualifying a lead, you're qualifying your buyer so that if you have got something that suits them, you're much more focused. You're taking them around property that actually could work for them, rather than just hoping that this viewing might just strike, might just resonate. Because I would imagine that as a seller of any type of house, if I was to ring you up and say, I've got a viewing on your house, you'd say, okay, great. You're relying on me to make sure that buyer, A, wants a house like this, B, can afford a house like this, and is comfortable living in this location. If it's one or none of the above, I'm wasting your time, their time, and probably my own. And that's not good estate agency. Good estate agency is qualifying your buyer. Good estate agency is understanding your buyer's needs and wants and making sure that you can match them to the most appropriate property. Because it's the path of least resistance to getting the result, isn't it? And if you do that, invariably you do get a result. So your client's pleased. And that leads to referral, it leads to everything else that business is about, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, understanding the buyer, crucial.
Is the estate agency model changing? If you think of like Zoopla and you think of big platforms that are, I'm hearing a lot of personal touch, coming from what you're saying. Is it changing? How do you envision things moving in the space?
So I think each individual agent working today, it doesn't matter which firm they're in, will have their own. They'll have their own systems, their own procedures, their own way about themselves, how they operate, I guess. The way I've decided to work is to focus more on that personal touch, to focus more on understanding the clients, because I believe it works. Traditional estate agency always used to be, list the house, stick it in the window, make a few phone calls, then stick it on the internet when that arrived. And then we'll right move, we'll put it on there and see what happens. People don't, where we are on Victoria Street, they don't wait under the cover of Barclays for us to open our front door and then rush across the moment we're open to view a house. The search starts online. So as an estate agent, your offer, we're a marketing business, right? You have to take a property, put it on a pedestal, and you have to shine the light on it. And that's your website. Your website links to the UK portals. Do we need to be on UK portals to sell houses on the Isle of Man when 90+% of our buyers are already here? You tell me whether or not, it's rhetorical, but you tell me whether or not when you're looking for property, you go Rightmove first. Or do you search because you've seen a board a local business's brand on a property and think out of interest or curiosity, oh, I wonder what that's about. The Isle of Man's different. In the UK, that traditional model, portals first approach, right? And then they wait for the portals to drive the business back to the branch. Here, it's network, it's brand, and it's approach. But you've got to go out and seek the business. But it's up to us as agents to adopt what we feel is the best approach, and then make sure that we've got the tech stack, make sure that we've got the web, the social channels, make sure that we're putting the effort in to create the content and create consistent, authentic content, prove that we're the experts in our field to build trust out there in a world that's full of noise. I mean, it is full of noise. So much content out there for potential sellers, because of course we're in the market of attracting sellers. So we've got the property to sell to the buyers. But the seller's got so much choice. So how do they differentiate between you and I? It's changed markedly because of the internet. And it's now much, much more of a marketing operation. But it's about the individual that is supported by the brand, because people buy from people. If you didn't like the individual you were dealing with, you just probably wouldn't. I mean, most people are gracious enough not to say anything. They would just move quietly on. So you've got to be able to, you've got to have the type of personality that people want to deal with.
Great.
And then have everything else in the background supporting it, underpinning it.
I think my personal experience is that you kind of almost need to know, if you like a property, you need to know before it goes on the market that it's going to come on the market in order to secure that property.
Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't it be great if you were registered with an agent because you're actively looking for a house, and before it went on a portal, before it went on a website, a social channel, you knew about it? Wouldn't that be great? How much value would you derive from that as a buyer? I'd say quite a lot. But let me flip it. If you were the seller and I was able to say to you, I can make that happen, how much value as a seller? We're busy. None of us have got huge amounts of time. We certainly don't want time-wasting viewers, because we spend hours cleaning up, making sure the property is as good as it can be for the viewing, because you get one chance to make a first impression. But if you could focus it, if you could narrow it right down so that the amount of time the seller actually had to spend was far, far less, you're making their lives a great deal easier. That's got to be worth something. An agency just needs to continually adapt and continually evolve so that the user experience on both the sell and the buy side just keeps improving. No one's infallible. We'll always make mistakes. You'll always piss people off. You don't do it intentionally. But essentially, just keep adapting, keep evolving, keep tweaking. What do they call that? The law of marginal gains, don't they? Black Box Thinking. It's a great book. You should read that.
No, I don't.
Yours is Atomic Habits, isn't it?
Yeah. Matthew Syed, the journalist,
James
Black
Clear.
Box Thinking.
Oh, right, okay.
Really good book. Yeah, I'll drop it round.
And in terms of marketing, you're an entrepreneur as well. You have billboards.im. So what's happening in that space? What are you seeing? Who's trying to reach the market share? Do you got any insights for us on that?
Yeah, I wouldn't say entrepreneur. That's probably a bit rich, and I can't take a huge amount of credit for that, because I've got somebody that works, in that business who's pretty good, pretty exceptional. But that was conceived as a business. I went across to the UK to buy a car because I couldn't get it here. And I'm driving back across the Mancunian Way and I see a portrait-style billboard. I think it was advertising Boohoo or something. And I thought, well, that's clever. By the time I got off the boat, I had a business plan. This was 10 years ago. And then I bought the first screen and put it in a window about 6 weeks later. And then built the business up from there. An outdoor advertising business is in my opinion, is very much like real estate and property. It's successful because it's well located. You talk about commercial stuff, right? You can have a commercial unit that's hugely successful because of where it is located in terms of the footfall, but on the opposite side of the road, it can fail. So you have to be focused as to where these things are. So you take, as the business has grown, we've put screens up And 99% of them are still there because there's locations, they're high footfall or they're roadside in really busy parts of the island, arterial routes into and out of Douglas. I think the one we've got on Peel Road is seen by over 100,000 people a week. Well, there's nowhere on the Isle of Man, not even the 3 radio stations combined can give you that. I think Manx Radio's figures are 40-odd thousand every month. Yet still people buy that space because it suits their marketing. Out of home isn't going to suit everybody. But if you want eyes on and you're content savvy, because it's all well and good having a digital screen with content on it, but if the content's not engaging, it's not going to resonate. So if you're content savvy and you understand how that works, in my opinion, there's no better place to advertise your business, your product, your offer, your sale, your service, whatever that might be. But yeah, I just thought to myself, there's an opportunity here. And thanks in the main to Ian, it's successful. But it works because of what it is, because it's well located.
And will you continue to try and get more billboards around? Because I'd imagine, again, I would guess, but we've got a very tranquil island and people want it to be the way it used to always be, and you have to move with times, and having billboards up might be perceived as the new way of life. But it's, you go anywhere in the world, that's part of the economy and part of advertising. So I'd imagine I would guess, I don't know, it's sometimes a struggle to get boards up because everyone wants it as it used to be. But I presume you continue to look for sites as well to...
Yeah, there's a fine balance. It's like everything, isn't it? But there's a fine balance between having too many and diluting the value of it, really. These things are not cheap. If you buy the right stuff and not... I mean, you can buy cheap Chinese technology, which fails. But for me, again, I just took the view, a little bit like the estate agency business. If a business is going to say, yeah, I trust you, I'm going to spend money on that, then I want their advert to look as good as it did on day 1, on day 50, on day 100, on day 2000, whatever that might be. So you've got to buy the quality. And then you can support that in the sell. You can justify the reasons behind, or some of the reasons behind why you ought to be there. Growing the business is, as I say, we've organically grown it over 10 years. We've got one more opportunity, potentially, that we're simply waiting for an approval on.
Yeah, okay.
And I think if that comes through, number one, we'll be very fortunate because there's a little bit of luck sprinkled on all of this. Because planning is tricky, because advertising regs have not been written. They were written in the pre-digital age, so we're always having to navigate around planning policy and all those sorts of things. But if we do get this one, then, Ian's got another fantastic opportunity to sink his teeth into and to go out to the market on, which, fingers crossed, will be well received. But then I think that's enough.
I never really thought about the logistics, but that one on Peel Road, obviously, just where it is as well, a stupid thing to say, but you've got to get electricity to, haven't you? You just think the things you maybe don't think about logistically, let alone the planning, the advertising,
and then getting the MUA to join the power.
Yeah.
I can't do that till next November.
Yeah.
Well, no, you need to do it next week. So there's lots of hurdles with all of these things. But again, look, tenacity. It took 3 years for me to have the meeting with Douglas Council to propose that site to switching it on. 3 years. And that's not because I was sort of lethargic in my approach. That's just how it works. Yeah. It's just the machine and the pace at which that machine works. Well, we need to do this, we need to get the consent. And, we follow every appropriate procedure. Yeah. But again, I think having spoken now to a number of operators in the UK, and I've got a good network of operator contacts now in the UK that run all of these roadside digital screens, they all have the same challenges with local councils, with national highways particularly. So it's not uncommon. You just keep going. I think if you, again, it sounds like a soundbite, but if you believe in it, you believe in the end result and the end product, just go for it. What have you got to lose?
Yeah, I suppose we spoke about earlier, just a little bit of persistence on the island just to get these things through, to see them through.
Yeah, leaning into it, isn't it?
But you just got to drive it forward. Do your best with it. But no, it's a great little business. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks for joining us, Tim. It's good to get some insights into the property market
Thanks for having me.
and your side hustles.
Yeah.
And thanks very much.
Tim, where can people find you? If they just is it Black Grace Cowley website with the domain?
Yeah, so blackgracecowley.com. They can find me on Instagram is tim.sells.houses. We've also got a LinkedIn. Black Grace Cowley itself's got Instagram and Facebook, all the usual sort of social channels. So just have a look.
We'll put them in the show notes.
Around.
Thanks.
Yeah. And as I say, if anybody wants just to talk or generally just have a natter about things, they're very welcome just to
Reach out to you.
reach out. Yeah, exactly.
Tim, always a pleasure catching up. Thanks very much for making the time to chat to us today.
No problem.
Thank you, Tim.
Thanks, chaps. All right.